The date was December 5, 1945. The world was just beginning to breathe after the long dark years of the Second World War. On this clear afternoon in Florida, 5 American Navy planes took off from the Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale. They were powerful Avenger torpedo bombers, strong and reliable machines of war. Their mission was simple, a routine training flight over the Atlantic Ocean. They were supposed to fly east, practice some bombing runs, and then return home. But they never did. The sky, which had been bright and clear, seemed to swallow them whole. It was as if they simply vanished from the face of the earth. It happened in a strange and infamous stretch of ocean known as the Bermuda Triangle, connecting Bermuda, Florida, and Puerto Rico. A place where ships and planes have disappeared without a trace, and questions often lead to more questions. The mystery of Flight 19 is like a deep, dark well. The more we look into it, the less we seem to see the bottom. Flight 19 was the designation for a group of 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers. These were not small, fragile planes. They were robust, single-engine aircraft, each weighing over 10,000 pounds. On this day, they were on a training mission called Navigation Problem Number 1. Fly east to Hens and Chickens Shoals, then north briefly, then southwest back to base. The leader of the flight was Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, an experienced pilot with over 2,500 hours of flying time. The other 13 men were students, qualified pilots with hundreds of hours. The planes were checked and fully fueled before takeoff. They had enough fuel for about 5.5 hours. They took off at approximately 2:10 p.m. on a calm, clear afternoon. It was a perfect day for flying, but as the afternoon wore on, something began to go terribly wrong. Out over the water, landmarks disappear. The sky and sea can look the same in every direction. In 1945, navigation depended on watches, compasses, and eyes. If one failed, a pilot could become lost, and if the leader was lost, he could lead the flight astray. This simple training flight was about to become a desperate struggle for survival against an unseen and confusing enemy. Around 4:00 p.m., about an hour and a half after they took off, a strange radio message was heard. It came not from Taylor at first, but from one of the student pilots. He sounded worried. He was asking another plane for a reading from his compass.
Then the flight leader's voice came through, but it was not calm. Both of my compasses are out, and I am trying to find Fort Lauderdale.
I am over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down. Ground controllers, puzzled, told Taylor to fly north if he was over the Keys, to hug the coast and return home.
Another pilot suggested if we would just fly west, we would get home. Taylor overruled him. He chose to fly east instead.
This was a fatal mistake. They were already in the Atlantic, and flying east took them farther out to sea. The last transmissions grew faint with static as the sun set and the weather worsened. The planes were running low on fuel.
Around 6:20 p.m., Taylor said, "All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." After that, silence.
As soon as radio contact was lost, a massive search and rescue operation was launched. The Navy, the Army, the Coast Guard, all answered. Hundreds of planes and ships scoured a vast area. Night fell, making the search difficult. They looked for flares, life rafts, oil slicks, any floating debris. The search area covered hundreds of thousands of square miles, yet night brought only darkness and disappointment. Tragically, a PBM Mariner flying boat sent to look for them also vanished. Trainer 49 took off around 7:30 p.m. and was never heard from again. A tanker in the area reported seeing a huge explosion in the sky, a ball of fire that fell into the sea and burned for 10 minutes. The tanker reached the spot and found an oil slick and some debris. No survivors. The Mariner probably exploded mid-air. For 5 days, the largest air and sea search to date continued. Hundreds of planes covered 250,000 square miles but found nothing. No wreckage, not a life raft, not a trace of the 14 men. The disappearance of the rescue plane only deepened the mystery and the grief. One of the most prominent theories centers on a simple but critical instrument, the compass. In Taylor's first distress transmission he said, "Both of my compasses are out." For a pilot over open water, a working compass is as vital as wings. The Avengers had a magnetic compass and a gyro compass. For both to fail is highly unusual. Other pilots had compasses that appeared to work. One suggested flying west, evidence someone still had a workable heading. In the military, the flight leader makes decisions. Student pilots are trained to follow, even if they had doubts. Some have proposed magnetic anomalies or electronic fog in the Bermuda Triangle disrupting instruments, but there is no solid scientific evidence for such phenomena. The Navy initially blamed pilot error but later changed the report to cause unknown. With no wreckage, certainty is impossible. Did the instruments fail, or did the man trusting them fail? The compass problem remains central to the mystery. It is a question we may never answer. A simpler and more tragic theory is that Flight 19 simply ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean. They took off at 2:10 and had fuel for about 5.5 hours. By around 7 o'clock their tanks would be near empty. Ditching an Avenger at night in rough seas was extremely dangerous. The plane could sink very quickly, sometimes in less than a minute. Even if they escaped into life rafts, the cold, darkness and rough seas made survival unlikely, and detection nearly impossible. Powerful currents like the Gulf Stream could move any debris far from the crash site, compounding the difficulty of locating wreckage. While sensational ideas like aliens or time warps capture imaginations, historians and investigators point to loss of fuel, human error, and nature as the likeliest causes. If the planes ditched far from land in deep water, debris could sink quickly to depths that make recovery nearly impossible. It is a story of human error compounded by the unforgiving power of nature. Beyond instruments and fuel, we must consider the human element, the leader's state of mind. Lieutenant Charles Taylor had recently been transferred and reportedly asked to be excused from the flight. He was told to fly anyway. He was an experienced pilot, but stress, fatigue, or illness could have affected his judgment that day. Spatial disorientation can deceive any pilot. When sky and sea merge, perception of up, down, left, and right can vanish. Taylor may have mistaken Bahamian Islands for the Florida Keys. Familiarity with Miami area flights may have reinforced a false belief about his location. Student pilots are taught to follow their leader. Challenging an instructor in flight would be a serious breach of protocol. Radio chatter shows doubts among the crew, but ultimately they followed Taylor. The result was tragic. Lieutenant Taylor was not a bad pilot, he may simply have been a lost man who led 13 others into the cold Atlantic. When a mystery runs deep, imagination fills the gaps with extraordinary ideas. Tabloids and pop culture linked Flight 19 to UFOs and aliens, ideas that gained traction in the 1960s and 1970s. Proponents point to compass failure and strange transmissions as evidence of advanced technology interfering with planes. Other theories propose portals or wormholes, that Flight 19 slipped into another time or dimension. These are powerful stories, but not evidence. No credible scientist has verified stable wormholes on Earth, and there are no confirmed alien artifacts from the Triangle. Movies and books amplify these myths. Fiction blends with fact in the public imagination. The real mystery is more mundane, how small human errors and powerful nature combine to erase evidence and confound investigators. Fascinating to think about, but without evidence these remain myths, stories that speak more to our hopes and fears than to history. Nearly 80 years later, the story still captivates and mystifies. Books, films, and documentaries keep the story alive. Flight 19 remains one of aviation's most famous unsolved cases. Modern searches with sonar and submersibles have explored the seafloor, but no confirmed pieces of the lost Avengers have been recovered. Wrecks have been found and briefly celebrated, but forensic work often shows they were not the missing aircraft. Naval historians and aviation experts generally agree the likeliest explanation is human error, misnavigation, and the ocean's power. It was not one plane but 5, and then a 6th, searching for them. These elements together created the perfect storm for a legend. The 27 men remain ghosts in the machine of history, a question mark over dark Atlantic waters. We continue to ask questions, tell the story, and look at the sky and the sea with a sense of wonder and a little fear. Flight 19 remains a cautionary tale. Instruments can fail, leaders can be disoriented, and the ocean can erase all trace. Theories range from compass failure to fuel exhaustion to sensational ideas, yet most experts find pilot error and nature the most plausible. We remember the men, not the myths. If you found this exploration meaningful, consider supporting continued historical research. Sources and further reading appear in the description. Thank you for watching. The Bermuda Triangle keeps its secrets, but our search for answers continues.